Minnesota Gardening Podcast. My name is Brad Tabke, and it's my honor to have you here with us today, talking about plants and trends for the 2022 season in garden centers and just the green industry in general. I have my great friend Heidi Highland is with us today. She owns Heidi's Growhaus and Heidi's Lifestyle Gardens, and just an absolute all-around amazing person. And it was so much fun talking with Heidi. Our conversations always go long, which is a beautiful thing, at least to me. Hopefully you as the listener think the same thing there. So it is just great to have Heidi here with us for episode 18 of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. And so you can go to minnesotagardening.com and grab the show notes. We have links to the Growhaus. We have links to the other things that we talked about in this episode, and hope you check those out there. But here is Heidi Highland talking about trends in the garden center industry. All right, we have another great guest for you today. My good friend Heidi Highland, he is here with us today to talk about the garden center and nursery industry and trends and what people are looking for and what people are seeing today. So Heidi, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for asking me, Brad. It's fun to spend time with you and talk about one of our mutual passion plays.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And before we get too far into this, will you let everybody know you've got your hands in a lot of different aspects of the green industry and what you do. So will you let folks know what you do and about the Growhaus and just all those different aspects of your world?
Yeah, of course. So the Growhaus is a 5.5 acre nursery and garden center in Corcoran, western suburbs of Minneapolis. And we focus on sort of sustainable opportunities out there. We're trying to do the next iteration of garden center a little bit differently. So we're just 6 years young, but my background has been over 40 years of fine gardening service, seasonal switch out of containers, maintenance of, estates, commercial sites, that sort of thing. And then we've also got a landscape division, which is design and installation for landscapes. So I'm really lucky. I fell into this when I was 17, and I couldn't have picked it if I tried. I think that God had a vision for me, and I found this at a very early age.
It's a beautiful thing, and I highly encourage everybody to go to the Growhaus. It's just a really cool place with a lot of really great things, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, Heidi, is because we're at Minnesota Gardening focusing on ecology and landscaping for more than just aesthetics, for life cycles of plants and making sure that we are looking at a more holistic approach to how we do landscape. And so just wanted to talk with you about trends in landscaping, how you guys are doing the whole garden center thing differently in order to meet the needs of the next generations of gardeners. So first, let's just start with the trends and what you're seeing and what customers are asking for in your garden center that may be different from the past.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an overarching idea, Brad, that everybody's looking for healing and food and paying attention to water. And these green trends have been around for a long time, but we're focusing on it anew. I mean, we're the it industry since COVID. And something that many of us have practiced for a long time, more are coming to. And so it's really an exciting time to highlight our industry with new audiences. And I think one of the reasons that gardening plants in general are so popular is because there's something for everyone. Whether you wanted to do one small house plant or a huge vegetable garden, there's diversity, there's choice, there's inclusivity. It isn't sort of, you have to cookie cutter it and do it that way. There's opportunity for everybody. And so that feels good, right? It doesn't have to be overwhelming, although I think it is. I think you and I both know that there's so much to discuss in this industry that it can feel overwhelming.
Right.
And so if people just sort of jump in where it makes sense to them, it makes it easier.
Yeah, and having that entry point is really important. And I want to dive a little more into the healing side of things as to, and we in the podcast, and I haven't really talked about that a ton, but you're totally right of getting your hands in the dirt and getting out into nature and those types of things are incredibly important. So how does healing really factor into landscape and gardening?
Yeah, there's a huge health and wellness standpoint, not only for our well-being as individuals, but from the ecosystem. And so those are sort of two different silos that don't work within a vacuum, right? We cross-pollinate these benefits within how we live and breathe. But I, as you know, Brad, but for your audience, I bring horticultural therapy as a treatment modality to various populations. And you know, we know that when you touch soil, it releases serotonin in our bodies. There's a bacterium, a natural bacterium in the soil that causes this to happen. And so we know that we're supposed to be in nature because we really get innate benefits. But, you know, if you want to sort of intentionally try to do it too, we know houseplants are so popular now, right? And one of the reasons is because people know that it cleans their indoor air. And so you're bringing the outside in. And heck, in Minnesota, where we're talking right now in the middle of winter, you want to try to bring the outdoor in as much as you can when you're in our shoulder seasons. So
right.
The houseplants are so popular because of that. I also think the reason houseplants is because there's lots of community building around it. There's opportunities to share about your plants, either on social media or with events and gathering. There's lots of education. People are liking learning. There's plant swaps. So that whole sort of community building in COVID, we've felt isolated, and plants are giving us a way to connect with one another. And that's been super fun. There's also a way to easy entry for houseplants, right? You can do an easy pothos. Everybody probably is familiar or will be soon with that very basic plant or a spider plant. You know, the things your grandmother had and passed down to you. Maybe it's a Christmas cactus. You know, it's hearkening to times of old. That feels good to us as well. And then now, if you get a little more adventurous, you can try to propagate those really, you know, hard to curate plants. So that's really been special too. You can enter at any point with the house plants.
And you guys at the Growhaus have been doing, as I watch you on social media and what has been happening there, you do just a tremendous job with that community building side of landscape, and by having classes in the greenhouse and once, I mean, there's a lot of space in a greenhouse to be able to separate people and do that once we kind of got the go ahead for being able to do that during COVID pandemic. But you guys were really great about getting people in and getting people to interact and doing that. So how do you feel like that is? How are your customers and how are people who like gardening? How is that building for what they want to do next into the future as we think about that and community gardens and just that sense of connection?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Brad, because people are really striving for community, and we were relevant really pretty much right away, and people feel safer outside, if you will. They want to gather, but they like outdoor spaces. And that's not just from a safe COVID standpoint, I believe. It's that we're in nature. We're out there immersed in that environment. And so, of course, it feels better. And so our make and takes or our workshops are really some of the most important and successful events that we have, because you're learning and it's hands-on, and maybe you're with your mother or your best friend, or maybe you're meeting somebody new. Maybe you just needed to get out of your home office for a minute and you wanted something to try something you've never done before. So those crafts with plants are hugely important. And it spins into, making a moss wall, or a kokedama plant, where you put the plant in the moss, and moss just feels good and smells good. And so all of those things hit all of our senses. Somebody told me once that when all of your senses are engaged, all at the same time is when we're most fully alive. And where does that happen? In a garden.
Right.
And so, we're experiencing all of these things and together, and it feels great. Macrame, making your own hanging structures, macrame, doing a dried fruit garland. It's spinning into more than just creating a summer container to take home. That's hugely important as well. And we will always have those types of classes. But folks are asking for a little bit more than your basic. I don't know that we'll have a class for this, but, have you seen those acrylic flower jewelry pieces?
Yeah.
People are putting a dried flower into acrylic and then hanging it on an earring. So we're trying to, drape flowers all over us as much as we can. And we try to layer that sort of the local makers into all that we do there at Growhaus as well, whether it's, curated planters and there's, somebody is making the planters, whatever's locally made, we try to highlight because we like to support small businesses and customers are looking for that as well. So that health and wellness as individual, we see it in many different opportunities. And it doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't happen in a silo. It is totally cross-pollinated within the healing realm for our personal well-being.
And with your personal gardening and things, we've known each other. I was trying to think earlier, and I think that we've known each other for 15, almost 20 years now, Heidi. It's been a while. I met you not long after we moved to Minnesota, and I've known that you do a lot of really cool things in your gardening with incorporating, fruits and vegetables and different types of things that people normally wouldn't put into or wouldn't think about putting into an ornamental perennial garden or different things like that. Are you seeing that as a trend for what customers and what people are wanting to do with their gardens as well?
Yeah, totally, Brad. And it has been fun knowing you all of these years and our different iterations of ourselves. But isn't it nice to have this constant still of these plants, to know that plants heal? And from an ecosystem standpoint, certainly we're talking about native plants and they're more drought tolerant and they certainly attract the pollinators. And, I think it's good to kind of clarify too. People will say, I want a pollinator garden. And I'll challenge them to consider, well, your whole backyard is a pollinator garden potential. And it doesn't have to be, sort of a postage stamp of, oh, there's my rain garden. The whole landscape works as a functional opportunity. And it should all be for stormwater management or keeping water on our land. Oh, there's so many things I'm thinking of, Brad. I'm trying to figure out in which direction I'm going to go first.
You can, whichever way you want, Heidi.
Native plants are really important. We know that, right? Doug Tallamy has amazing books about it. There's so much that we can find about natives and nativars. A nativar is a cultivar of a native, right? Like the native Monarda, in my opinion, isn't the greatest plant. It kind of, is blurpily colored. It's kind of tall. It lodges or tips over. It can
powdery
get
mildew.
Powdery mildew, right? So if you have a cultivar of that native, maybe Garden View Scarlet, that's hybridized to have a brilliant red flower. It's a little bit shorter and stouter. It's a stockier stem, and it doesn't get powdery mildew as much. Maybe that's okay that you have a nativar. I believe that it's okay. I believe that we can have choice, and we don't have to be told you have to have all natives. Nobody feels good about being told what to do. And so there's choice. And I think so it all, again, comes back to education. People are really loving to learn now. What does it really mean to have or what does that mean to have a pollinator garden? And sometimes it's verbiage, right? And it's just semantics. And if you're making good choices that are good for you and the planet, you can feel happy about that, So we know that these native plants attract pollinators. And, if you leave them up for winter interest, it provides food and habitat All of that, again, is a closed loop system where the ecosystem is working in harmony together. You know, we talk about pollinators, and it makes me think of bee lawns. University of Minnesota Bee Squad here has made Minnesota leading the world in our understanding of how our gardens can work with us for the benefit of not just honeybees, which aren't native, but our local bees. And the U of M Bee Squad has worked to develop a bee lawn where your whole lawn becomes an ecosystem for pollinators. And I have a bee lawn that I mow high. I keep my mower deck, 4 to 6 inches high, so that those plants that are in the bee lawn, which include, blooming plants, prunella, purslane, plantain, thyme, can all bloom and attract the bees, and I don't mow the flowers off, right? So that the bees can be there. That's just an important thing to consider. Now, does it work for everybody? No. Does everybody want to do that? Certainly not. But many people do. And it's good to dispel the myths of things like, oh my gosh, there's going to be bees in my lawn and I'm going to step on them and they're going to sting me. Never once has that happened to me in the 8 years I've had my bee lawn. So it's an opportunity to talk and educate about this. And so, yeah, more people are wanting to do that. And more people are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. And so do you, when you say more people are wanting to do that, do you think trying to push at least my personal boundaries on things and understanding where folks are at? Because if you can definitely tell that in my bubble of humans that I interact with both online and in person, that thinking in a more holistic way and thinking about the ecosystem in our yards and at our homes is becoming more and more of an important thing to them. And then, like, as you talk about bee lawns and planting native and those types of things, do you think that message is getting out to the consumers in general, or are there nerds like me who are just the ones that are concerned and working with this kind of thing? Or do you think it's becoming more of a well-known in the public so that the demand is on that side for what they're able to purchase at a garden center when they have, a boxwood that dies, what they put back in that place? Are they just want another boxwood in there, or do they want some other types of things that are more fit with what in Minnesota?
That's a great question, Brad, because I'm probably in the same bubble you are. And so I'm with like-minded souls. That's right. And so my sense is, again, many of us have been thumping this for years, and it takes time to turn that tide. I tend to look to Europe and the coasts of the United States as my guide. And by the time it gets to sleepy Minnesota, it's easy a decade later. I created a PowerPoint on water, food, and healing a dozen years ago, and it's starting to turn. Yes, I do believe that, because I think they keep hearing it. What do they say? You've got to hear something 8 times before you really go, oh, I want to buy a Tesla or whatever. You know what I mean? The first time you hear it, you don't necessarily adopt that practice, but it's becoming more mainstream and more understood that, yeah, I think it's at the top of everybody's mind these days. Or I'm just not giving up that it needs to be. Maybe my hope is that, of course it is. Whether it really is or not, I guess you'd have to ask somebody who's not in my bubble. But, I think legislatively, it's going to become more so, right? Because, if we go back to sort of the idea of rain gardens and keeping water on our land, this, Brad, but the whole goal of a rain garden is to keep the water on your land, to clean it, to cool it, to slow it down. So a rain garden doesn't have to be a ditch in your front yard, right? It can be creatively done to achieve those goals. And legislatively now, when you build a commercial site, you have to have a stormwater plan like that in place. And so they're doing it, for big sites. We're not quite there from a homeowner standpoint, but should we be? Maybe. And maybe before the government tells us what to do, maybe homeowners want to adopt this themselves anyway and kind of have a good sense that, yeah, I am taking care of those needs, but I'm doing it in a way that makes sense to me and my landscape versus, the government coming down to it. I worry about our industry and how much we water, certainly. It's a resource that can be depleted, and we should protect that, and we should be thoughtful about that. And so maybe containers should be more drought-tolerant plants, not just really thirsty plants, because we know containers take more water than anything else. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that planter should also have some other redeeming benefits. Maybe it should have another stacking function. That's a permaculture terminology. Stacking function in a planter would be, there's pollinator benefit in that planter, as well as the aesthetics. It's providing foods for me. I'm overwintering it. It has an evergreen or a grass in it that is overwintering, so I'm not simply replanting it every year. I think people are really wanting to challenge themselves in their environments to make sure that, they're taking care of the water, whether it's rain barrels or rain chains or, thoughtful planters. There's things that we need to do with the water.
And Heidi, what sort of leadership role, as you talk about those things that need to happen, what sort of leadership role is the green industry and garden centers taking in and finding that next step and where things go next from an ecological perspective?
I'm a past president of the Minnesota Nursery and Landscape Association. That's where you and I first met, Brad, was with the MNLA.
Yep.
And it's a marvelous trade association that's really strong and reaching its centennial. And I'm very proud to be a part of this trade association. And we've partnered with local and national partners to ensure that there's standards that are set up for water-wise management. And we poll other professionals to come up with what those best management practices are. And then we disseminate that to our community, to the professionals, and encourage them to then pass them along to homeowners. Whether it's through the landscape division or through the garden center, there's opportunities on our websites that we can help homeowners make better choices. And one of the areas that it's going into is certainly with foods. And, you were talking about fruit trees earlier, Brad, and I've heard that fruit's going to be scarce in 30 years and that we should all plant more of our own fruit. And you look at, Florida freezing in seasons that they're not used to, or you look at how does it get trucked up here, what they're growing down there. We're all understanding that we need to grow more of our own, and we can grow much more fruit than you would think up here. And, my lemon tree, I summer outdoors and then winter indoors. And it's still fruiting for me right now. But wow. One of the important things to get my lemon tree to fruit is appropriate food for that lemon tree. And so my vermicomposting bin, my worm composting bin, has amazing, thick, rich food, or wormweed. They also call it wormweed. If my lemon tree is struggling, I put a little wormweed on it, and oh my gosh, it knows it. And it says, thank you very much. And it flowers and fruits. So the more we can share our simple strategies of what are those BMPs, the more success we have as a world. And I think we've all been put on the world to help one another. And when you help one another learn something, whether it's with a backyard, community group or your podcast group, you feel good about that because you've shared things that have helped one another. And I think that's great. I want to make sure that I make another plug for perennial edibles, Brad.
Yeah.
And it's not just a tomato or a basil, but it's perennial edibles. Like fruit trees, like berry bushes, but how about considering in your landscape to install strawberries as a ground cover? How about blueberries as a hedge? Maybe asparagus instead of a perennial grass, right? Asparagus waving in the wind rivals the look of any perennial grass I've ever seen. So
And
they can be functional and edible and aesthetic.
most people only know like the part of the asparagus that we eat in the spring. What will you tell everybody what is waving in the wind with the asparagus? Like how they do that?
Yeah, so when you harvest your asparagus, young asparagus when it's young, you're supposed to let go don't harvest it. Don't pick those fronds because you want the energy to go into the plant for a year or two. But at Growhaus, we have several-year-old asparagus so that you don't have to worry about that and you can harvest it right away. But you're still supposed to put some into the production of the fronds that come up. And they look like, asparagus fern, named such because that's what the foliage looks like on an asparagus, like an asparagus fern. And it can get red berries on it. And then it turns to this sort of tawny color in the fall. And it remains. So it's really a marvelous perennial that you can find it growing in ditches in Minnesota, probably hearkening back to farmsteads of old, right? It can be a marvelous and very easy perennial. We like to put rhubarb in a shade garden instead of a hosta. Certain perennials, you can push the envelope on sunshade, right? And if your edible isn't fruiting, if what you're harvesting from it is its leaves, like rhubarb, kale, spinach, maybe beet foliage, you're harvesting the leaves, you can push it into the shade a little bit further. So how about considering that, rhubarb, instead of fiddlehead ferns? The fiddlehead part, that's edible.
Right.
Mushrooms. Mushrooms are a hot topic these days, not only for the food piece, but for the mycelium and the healthy soils and bringing the nutritional value back into the soils. There's so many soil scientists out there that are finally starting to get some credibility for all of the work they've done in the lab for years. It's a complex ecosystem in the soil. And we need to honor that and learn about it. I'm not the one in my company that knows the most about it, but I want to learn more. We've got to pay attention to what we're putting in our soils. And so that, Brad, people are asking about that because they're putting these things into their mouths now too. They're putting, these plant-based gardens. They're recognizing that they're putting it into their mouth. They're putting it in the mouth of their children. Their dog might be out there. And should I really be putting, preen into my soil? Should I really be spraying Roundup in my gardens? And it's really exciting to see that homeowners are challenging themselves, that I don't think that feels good anymore. What should I do as an alternative? And so that's really an exciting time that we as professionals can help educate further.
That's a really beautiful thing because for so long there's just been standard practice is, you put down weed and feed in the spring to keep the crabgrass away. And we taught, and I think that you were involved in helping to develop the class for turf maintenance and taught that for many years about how weed and feed is a really bad thing. You just should not do that across an entire lawn, and trying to reduce those number of chemicals that you're using and working to get that down as close to zero as you possibly can. And to do that. And so it's great to hear that people are learning and understanding and catching on and just getting that feeling that the way we've always done things doesn't necessarily have to be the right thing.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And, I got to say too, Brad, part of it might have been our industry, right? Old school would have been, we thought it was the BMP of the day. We thought we were doing the right thing. And then when we learned that we're not, it's sort of like neonics. Neonicotinoids were the next iteration of pesticide after 2,4-D, right? We thought we were doing something better because it was better for humans. Oh, sidebar, we didn't know it was bad for bees. Okay.
Right.
Well, now we know it's bad for bees. And now what do? And, I don't spray many pesticides. In fact, the pesticides we spray most are for deer and bunnies. Those are the biggest pests that we find in the garden, because I think that the other natural occurring pests potentially are okay to stay there, right? The environment is trying to figure itself and balance itself out. Now, I don't know, maybe we could argue about that with Japanese beetles, but what I do for Japanese beetles is hand harvest more than anything else, right? And then you throw it in water, and then you feed it to your chickens. So there's and they're a protein source. So there's ways that we can choose to take care of issues that aren't harmful to the planet.
Right. And Japanese beetles is a great example of, we've just had obviously a glut of Japanese beetles here in the metro. It's luckily not all across the state yet at this point, but then for this year, for the first time, I saw just a bunch of winsome fly eggs on the Japanese beetle, which is a parasitoid that will kill that Japanese beetle and help to control the population. And so hopefully, as we continue to focus on making sure that we're creating environments for all of our insect friends to be able to live and thrive, that more of those winsome flies will help to come and balance out Japanese beetles. And by focusing on that, not using as many chemicals and things, we're helping to get that whole ecosystem bolstered and continue moving in the right direction.
Agreed, completely. Because potentially if you use some sort of a chemical, you might not know what it does to the winsome flies. Right. And so you've just gotten in the way of nature repairing herself. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, Heidi, we have done, as we always do, a fantastic job of talking. So I really appreciate you being here with us today and just sharing your wisdom with all of our listeners. And is there anything that we haven't gotten to yet that you really wanted to make sure to know, or anything I haven't asked you yet that you wanted?
I guess thanks for asking that sort of overarching thought, Brad. I think the biggest thing for me is to make easy entry for anybody to have fun and go outside and play. And, while it's serious stuff that we're doing, it also doesn't have to be heavy, and to enjoy it and just to learn as you go along. That's how we all learned, right? Sharing slips of iris over the fence was how gardening began back in the homesteads. And we're back to that, where we're just sharing information. So I applaud you for this marvelous platform to dispel wisdom and current knowledge. Yeah, come and see me at Growhaus, you and your beautiful family, and the rest of your audience. I would love to show you what we've got going on out there.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, Heidi Highland, thank you so much for being here. What is your website so people can make sure to find Growhaus, and how do you spell Growhaus?
Growhaus is Growhaus. Because I'm Austrian, Growhaus, Haus. So one word, Growhaus. And if you go to growhausmn.com, that'll take you to our website.
Perfect. And I invite as well. It's just a wonderful place for everyone to go, and all sorts of really cool statuary and just a lot of fun things. So make sure to visit Heidi's Growhaus out in Corcoran, which is in the west. Would you say northwest metro?
It's just past. Does everybody know where Medina Ballroom is? It's right by Medina Ballroom. So many people have gone to a concert there. That's usually what I use for Wayfind. But we're just west of Maple Grove and just a little bit north of Medina.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi. And I hope to see you again very, very soon. See what I mean? Heidi is just an absolute joy. So it was wonderful, wonderful talking with her about the green industry and the garden center industry and what's going on and how consumers are reacting to this new move forward for native plants and ecological landscape, and just focusing on the whole landscape and the whole person. And so it was great to hear how that is moving forward with her. And again, you can get the show notes for this episode by going to minnesotagardening.com and searching for episode 18. That will be right there and easy to find. And while you're there, please click the join button. So if you go on the top right after you go to minnesotagardening.com, just click join, and that will get you into our just awesome growing Minnesota gardening community. And so there you can download everything that's on Minnesota Gardening Community, and you can just check everything out that is going on there, and some special exclusive perks by being a part of the community. So with that, our next episode next week is a solo episode just with me, and we talk about the effects in the future of Minnesota gardening along with ecological garden concepts and how we think that is really going to change the world, and how you as a gardener can help to do that and be part of it. So that is there. We'll also talk about some really big upcoming courses and other information that we've got coming on the episode. So I will see you again next week. Have a great, great day.